Hey, good afternoon, Columbia. How's everybody doing today? Y'all thought y'all were just coming for some good barbecue. Y'all are in for a treat here in a few minutes. As my good friend is making her way in here, I just want to welcome everybody to Richland County. It's so good to be back home. I know Nikki's excited to be back home as well. I see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd, and before I introduce my friend, I'd like to recognize a few of them. I see a good colleague of mine, Representative Mike Neese here. I see a great individual in the Republican Party, Caton Dawson, for many years, been a key part of the party here as well. And also today we've got our local Republican Mayor, Daniel Rickeman, in the house. Good to see Daniel. And I can't see him, but I know he was on his way. There's only two Republican Richland County councilmen, and one of them was on his way here. Don Weaver, where's he at? Don, raise your hand. Thank you for your support, Don. Good to see you. For those of y'all who don't know me, I'm Nathan Ballantyne. I am the only Republican elected official in the House and Senate in Richland County. So it's good to be here today. It's great to have my good friend here, Nikki Haley. Y'all, raise your hand. Raise your hand if it's your first time being at a Nikki event. Look at that. You've seen this before, haven't you? Y'all, this is awesome. This is what's been happening across the country, and y'all been seeing that. A lot of people are getting involved in politics that have not been involved before because they see the energy that Nikki brings to the campaign trail. They see her vision for what she wants to do. Now, here's something that those of y'all that know her well have known for many years. The good old boys, we know it, have never liked Nikki Haley, even from the start. Those of y'all that know, about 20 years ago, she beat the longest serving member of the House of Representatives. That didn't go over too well with the establishment at all, y'all. And from the get-go, she's had to be a fighter every step of the way. I've been there as her desk mate and suite mate. I have seen history in the making. I saw it when she held the good old boys accountable for voting on the record. Y'all, she paid a price for that. Get her book if you haven't seen it. But they were kicking, screaming, bashing, whatever they could come up with, they did. And they're doing that today. So don't be alarmed when you see that. They've never liked Nikki Haley, the establishment, that is. But the people always have. You're looking at a former governor for South Carolina right here behind me, y'all. She didn't need the good old boy. She didn't need all these people who think highly of themselves, endorsing her and things like that. She needed workers, but more importantly, she needed y'all. She needed the people. And when y'all got behind her, she went from Nikki Who to one of the best governor that we've had in quite some time, probably since Carol Campbell days, quite frankly, y'all. She brought jobs to our state. She was tough on illegal immigration. She passed E-Verify. I think we were one of the first in the country to do that. So she knows what needs to be done. She did it here at our level in South Carolina. She's going to do it when she becomes president. Y'all, I'll end with this. South Carolina, y'all know what we do. We pick presidents here. Most of the times we get it right. And I've got confidence in y'all that when we vote on February 24th, we'll get it right again. If you don't want to stand in long lines, because y'all, a lot of people are turning out, you can vote early starting February 12th. But I go to sleep at night because I've seen this movie before. Y'all have seen it as well in South Carolina. Everyone is against her but the people, and that's how she's going to win. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce my good friend and your next president of the United States of America, Nikki Haley.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with my friend Nathan and so many friends with us. It's a great day in South Carolina. We have been through so much together. Think back to when this all started. When I came in as governor, we had 11% unemployment. We had thousands of people on welfare, and South Carolina was the butt of the jokes. And what did we do? We all pulled together and we rallied. And what happened? From there, we went and we started making sure that all those jobs that went overseas with the textiles, we went and said, let's start building things in America again, and we're going to do it in South Carolina. By the time I left, we were building planes with Boeing. We were building more BMWs than any place in the world. We brought in Mercedes-Benz. We brought in Volvo, 5 international tire companies. They were calling us the Beast of the Southeast, which I still love. We moved that 11% unemployment down to 4%. We announced jobs in every county in the state. We acknowledged some truths. We said if you have to show picture ID to buy Sudafed, if you've got to show picture ID to get on a plane, you should have to show picture ID to protect the integrity of the election process. We passed voter ID in South Carolina. We passed the toughest illegal immigration law in the country. President Obama sued us over it, and we won. We fought against the Syrian refugees coming in. We fought against Guantanamo Bay prisoners. We passed tort reform. We passed pension reform. We cut taxes. More than that, we moved 35,000 people from welfare to work. We changed our entire prison system, and now we have the lowest recidivism rate in the country. And South Carolina became proud. By the time I left, we were named the friendliest state in the country, the most patriotic state in the country. And don't blame me for this one, the number 2 state in the country that people were moving to. And now you look at where we are now. It's tough to see, right? We're $34 trillion in debt. We're having to borrow money just to make our interest payments. China owns some of that debt. And I would love to tell you that Biden did that to us. But I always spoke in hard truths to you, and I'm going to do that with you today. Our Republicans did that to us too. You go look at that $2.2 trillion COVID stimulus bill that they passed with no accountability. They expanded welfare that left us with 80 million Americans on Medicaid, 42 million Americans on food stamps. That's a third of our country. And did Republicans try and make it right? No, they doubled down and opened up pet projects and earmarks for the first time in 10 years, pushing through 7,000 of them last December. Want to know how they spent your money? $30 million on an honors college in Vermont, $10 million to tear down a hotel in Alaska, $7.5 million on a courthouse in Colorado. All while 1 in 6 American families can't pay their utility bill. 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 50% of American families can't afford diapers. Congress has one job, and that's to give us a budget on time. Do you know they've only given us a budget on time 4 times in 40 years? Do you know what we're going to do about that? You don't get us, well, God bless you for saying that. We're going to tell them, you don't get us a budget on time, you don't get paid, period. Don't you think it's finally time we had term limits in Washington, D.C.? Don't you think we need to have mental competency tests for anyone over the age of 75? Now, let me say this. I'm not being disrespectful when I say that. We all know people over 75 that can run circles around us. And then we know Joe Biden. These are people making decisions on our national security. These are people making decisions on the future of our economy. We need to know they're at the top of their game. So what are we going to do about the economy? The first thing is I think we claw back the $100 billion of unspent COVID dollars that are still out there. Instead of 87,000 IRS agents going after middle America, let's go after the hundreds of billions of dollars.
Not the war machine! Free, free Palestine! 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 Free, free Palestine!
You know, let me just say this. Oh, God bless them. You know, I'll say this. Don't ever get upset about people like that. Because my husband and military men and women sacrifice every day for their right to do that. So instead of those 87,000 IRS agents going after middle America, let's go after the hundreds of billions of dollars of COVID fraud. 1 out of every $7 that was spent fraudulently. If 8% of our budget is interest, quit borrowing. Cut up the credit cards. You have to balance a budget every day. I had to balance a budget as governor. Why is Congress the only group that refuses to balance a budget? We'll stop the spending, we'll stop the borrowing, we'll eliminate the pet projects, and I will veto any spending bill that doesn't take us back to pre-COVID levels. That will save us trillions. Then we'll take as many federal programs as we can and send them down to the state level. That will reduce the size of the federal government, but it will empower people on the ground. Think education, think welfare, think healthcare, think mental health. All of those were empowered by the states. And then we want to make sure that we focus on the middle class. We're watching the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. We have to open up the middle class. That's why we want to eliminate the federal gas and diesel tax in this country. Make sure we cut taxes on the middle class. And let's make the small business tax cuts permanent. They made them temporary. We need to make them permanent. Small businesses are the heartbeat of our economy. We need to act like it. Then when it comes to education, did you know only 31% of 8th graders in our country are proficient in reading? Did you know only 27% of 8th graders in our country are proficient in math? If we don't do something quick, we're going to be in a world of hurt 10 years from now. What we need to do is make sure, first of all, that we focus on reading. We knew in South Carolina, if a child couldn't read by 3rd grade, they were 4 times less likely to graduate high school. So we started holding our kids back instead of pushing them forward. We brought in their parents. We did reading remediation. We set them up for success. We've got to do that all over this country to get our kids reading again. And no parent should ever wonder what's being said or taught to their child in the classroom. We need complete transparency in the classroom. We'll put every curriculum online so that parents can see it. And parents need to be able to decide where their kids go to school or what mode of education they get. They know their kids best. And let's start building things in America again. Let's put vocational classes back into our high schools. In South Carolina, we put apprenticeships. We taught our kids how to build things before they left school. Let's do that further and go nationwide with it. And then I got to tell you, to all your girl dads out there and all you strong moms, we love our boys, but we have to raise strong girls. Strong girls become strong women. Strong women become strong leaders. And none of that happens if we have biological boys playing in girls' sports. We've got to cut that out. And then when it comes to the border, it doesn't even look like the United States of America anymore, what we're allowing to have happen. Now remember, we were in that fight together. We passed the toughest illegal immigration law in the country. We need to take what we did in South Carolina and go nationwide with it. We need to do a national E-Verify program that requires every business to prove who they hire is in this country legally. We need to defund sanctuary cities once and for all. No more safe havens in America. We need to put 25,000 Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. Let's go back to the Remain in Mexico policy so that no one even steps foot on U.S. soil. And instead of catch and release, we need to go to catch and deport. That's how we will stop what's happening on the border. And you know, growing up in Bamberg, South Carolina, my parents always taught me, you take care of those who take care of you. I'm going to ask you if we're taking care of those who take care of us. Right now in America, over 35,000 of our veterans are homeless. 1 in 3 suffers from PTSD or thoughts of suicide. We lose 22 heroes a day to suicide. If a veteran needs a doctor's appointment at the VA, on average, it takes 29 days. Why 29 days? Because on the 30th day, they can go to the doctor or hospital of their choice. So midway through the 29 days, they get a call to reschedule, and the clock starts all over again. It's shameful how we treat our veterans. Now, y'all will remember when I was governor, Michael was deployed to Afghanistan. And when he came back home to us, that was a lot of prayers answered. But that was the easy part. When we got home, life got hard. Michael couldn't hear loud noises. He couldn't be in crowds. Life had passed him by for the year that he was gone, and the transition was tough. We can't just love our men and women when they're gone. We got to love them when they come back home, too. So let's do more than just the 2-week transition and send them on their way. Let's do telehealth so they get the mental health care they need right when they need it. Let's let them go to the doctor or hospital of their choice. They've earned that right. And I think the best way we deal with VA health care, I think every member of Congress should have to get their health care from the VA, and you watch how fast that gets fixed. It'll be the best health care you've ever seen, guaranteed, I promise. And you know, there were 2 things when I was at the United Nations that Russia, China, and Iran never wanted us to have. They never wanted us to have a strong military, and they never wanted us to be energy independent. We won't just be energy independent, we'll be energy dominant. We'll get the EPA out of the way. They care more about sagebrush lizards than they do about whether we can afford our utility bill. We'll get the EPA out of the way. We'll speed up our permitting. We'll export as much liquefied natural gas as we can. We'll do nuclear power. We will turn our energy sector into an economic powerhouse. That's how we'll make sure we pay down our debt and get inflation down as well. And then when it comes to national security, we need to focus on what works. When I was at the UN, we told countries what America was for and what America was against. I didn't care if they didn't like me, but I wanted them to respect America. And when you look right now, you've got a war in Europe, you've got a war in the Middle East, you've got North Korea testing intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of hitting the U.S., and you've got China on the march. None of that would have happened had we not had that debacle in Afghanistan. Think about it. The fact that Michael and his military brothers and sisters who served there had to watch us leave Bagram Air Force Base in the middle of the night without telling our allies who stood shoulder to shoulder with us for decades because we asked them to be there. Think about what that said to our friends. More importantly, think about what that said to our enemies. Now we've got a lot going on. Our focus needs to be on a couple of things. 1, having a strong military. Strong militaries don't start wars. Strong militaries prevent wars. And the second thing is make sure that who we partner with is strategically aligned with us. I don't think we need to give cash to any country, friend or enemy, because you can't follow it and you can't hold it accountable. We partner with our friends and we tell our enemies what we expect of them. When we moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, I was proud to take on that fight. But I was mad because I saw how many countries voted against us. And I went to my staff and I said, I want you to put a book together. I want you to list all 193 countries that belong to the UN. I want the second column to be the percentage of times they voted with the U.S. and against the U.S. And I want the third column to be how much foreign aid we gave them. I took that book and I gave it to President Trump. And I said, quit trying to buy friends. Quit paying off enemies. That's not how you do it. Last year we gave $80 billion in foreign aid. You know who we gave it to? Iraq, that harbored terrorists that tried to kill our soldiers. Zimbabwe, the most anti-American African country there is. We gave money to Belarus, who's holding hands with Russia as they invade Ukraine. We gave money to Cuba, who's a state sponsor of terrorism and now has a spy base going up against us. But the one that makes me sick to my stomach, we gave money to China. How weak do we look? When I am president, we will no longer give money to countries that hate America. So you know me. We will take that same mentality that we had in South Carolina, and we will fight for freedom and fight for America there in D.C. But let's look at the situation that we have. We have got to acknowledge some hard truths, and I have always spoken to you in hard truths. Republicans have lost the last 7 out of 8 popular votes for president. That is nothing to be proud of. We should want to win the majority of Americans. But the only way we're going to win the majority of Americans is if we have a new generational conservative leader and we leave the negativity and the baggage behind. Hard truth. I voted for Donald Trump twice. I was proud to serve America in his administration. But chaos follows him. You know I'm right. Chaos follows him. And we can't be a country in disarray and a world on fire and go through 4 more years of chaos. We won't survive it. Another fact. We will have a female president of the United States. But the hard truth is, it's either going to be me or Kamala Harris. And you know why? If Donald Trump is the nominee, Joe Biden wins and Kamala Harris becomes president. That's a fact. Look at every one of the general election polls. In every one, another one came out yesterday. Quinnipiac came out yesterday. Donald Trump loses by 7 points to Joe Biden. I'm in every one of those general election polls. I defeat Biden by up to 17 points. Do you know what that means? That means it's bigger than the presidency. That's House, that's Senate, that's governorships, that's school board. But more than that, you win with a double-digit win going into D.C. Guess what? That's a mandate to get rid of our out-of-control spending and get our economy back on track, a mandate to get our kids reading again and go back to the basics in education, a mandate to secure our borders with no more excuses, a mandate to bring law and order back to our country, and a mandate for a strong America we can all be proud of. Don't you want that? Because we could have that. But it's going to take a lot of courage. Courage from every single person in this room. And the overflow rooms. Courage for me to run. And courage for every one of you to know, don't complain about what happens in a general election if you don't participate in this primary. We have a choice to make. 70% of Americans have told us they don't want a Trump-Biden rematch. The majority of Americans disapprove of Donald Trump. The majority of Americans disapprove of Joe Biden. Both of those presidents put us trillions of dollars in debt that our kids are never going to forgive them for. And do we really want to go forward with a country in disarray and a world on fire with two candidates in their 80s? We need someone who can go 8 years hard and make sure we get things back on track. And you look now at what's happening. Trump has surrounded himself with the political establishment. The same political establishment that has gotten nothing done with us. Nothing for us at all. And then after New Hampshire, we started in Iowa. We had 2%, and we moved up to 20%. We had 14 people in this race. We got rid of 12 of the fellas. We got one more we got to catch up to. The goal is to build. So we went from 2% to 20% in Iowa. Then we got 43% in New Hampshire. But you know what the tall tale of that is? Donald Trump didn't get 43% of the vote. That should scare you. Then you go and you look at the night of New Hampshire, and he literally throws a temper tantrum on stage. He was completely unhinged. Because he had told everybody I was going to lose by 25 or 30 points, and we got 43. Then the next day, he went and he said, anybody that supports Nikki Haley is barred permanently from MAGA. We had some fun with that. We printed some T-shirts that said barred permanently. We sold 15,000 T-shirts. Then the next day he goes in and he pushes the RNC to name him the presumptive nominee. And they got blowback, and that didn't work. And then the next day he's in court, and he has a big verdict against him. And I'll be honest, I haven't paid attention to his court cases. I don't know where he's innocent, where he's guilty, or what's happened. But what I do know is after that speech he gave in New Hampshire, after that verdict, he railed on a lot of things. He talked about revenge after New Hampshire. He talked about how he was a victim after the court case. But you know what he didn't talk about? He never once talked about the American people. Never once. He talked about himself. And now it comes out, our campaign reports have come out, and he's used $50 million of his campaign funds on legal fees. His court cases have just started. There are 2 more in March, and it goes out for the rest of the year. Do you really think he's going to win against Joe Biden when he's spending all of that money on legal fees? He's not. So this is what I'll tell you. We have done it in South Carolina before. We can do it in South Carolina again. But what it's going to take is for everybody to go and find every one of your friends and family members, and you know who they are, that only vote in a general election. They don't typically vote in primaries. The story about primaries, if you vote in a general election, you're given a choice. If you vote in a primary, you make that choice. So when you leave here, take a yard sign. When you leave here, go tell your friends and family to vote early starting February 12th. When you leave here, have 5 people every day that you say, did you go out and vote, and make sure it happens. And when you leave here, keep the faith, because we're going to be okay. We just got to do the work. All good things don't come easy. They come when you go through the burn. They come when you go through the hurt, because that's the only way you appreciate the blessing. Someone asked me why I was running, and I will tell you, 7 months ago, I dropped Michael off at 4 a.m. for another year-long deployment. And I watched him and 230 soldiers pick up their 2 duffel bags of belongings and go to a country they'd never been, all in the name of protecting America. They're willing to sacrifice their lives and their families because they still believe in this amazing experiment that is America. So if they're willing to sacrifice for us there, shouldn't we be willing to fight for America here? Because we have a country to save. You do for me what you did those 2 times in South Carolina to prove to you that you made a right decision. Thank you so much, Columbia. I appreciate it. God bless you.